My pseudonym is No Watchy, and I'm the human creator behind this channel. The script for this video is the result of my own research and writing. I'm a very private person, which is why both the presenter and their voice were created using artificial intelligence.
The present research work is based on the bibliography shown on screen.
What would you do if someone came to you claiming to be sent by God, saying the Bible foretold his arrival, and that God had entrusted him with the task of rewarding the chosen ones? You'd probably think, this guy is completely nuts. Well, today I'll show you an equally embarrassing episode in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, one that reveals just how far these men are willing to go to twist the meaning of biblical passages. Before we start, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and your subscription would mean a lot. If you can take a second, or if you enjoy learning about Jehovah's Witnesses from an objective perspective, subscribe. I'm sure you'll enjoy the content. And while you're at it, please hit the like button. That helps the algorithm recommend the video and allows us to reach more people on YouTube. I truly appreciate it. All right, let's dive into the juicy backstory. We find ourselves at the time of the death of Charles Taze Russell, founder of the Watchtower. He died suddenly on October 31st, 1916, aboard a train in the southwestern United States during a preaching tour. Let's remember that Russell was considered the faithful and wise servant. If you want to learn more about this farce, I've linked a video above. As with any human, or should I say worldly organization, when a great founding leader dies, his close associates begin to wonder, could I be the next one in charge? Joseph Franklin Rutherford was keen to test the waters. Between November 2nd and 3rd, 1916, he asked one of Russell's closest associates whether there would be a successor to the great leader. The man he asked was Paul Samuel Leo Johnson. Without a doubt, Rutherford's question had an agenda. As the Watchtower's legal counsel, he knew that Russell had stipulated in his will that the editorial committee, consisting of 5 members, would take charge of the Watchtower Society after his death. In other words, Russell didn't intend to leave the Watchtower to a single man, but rather to divide control among a 5-member editorial committee. He had also stated that any publication issued by the Watchtower needed to be authorized by at least 3 of the 5 committee members. However, Johnson's response to Rutherford was quite revealing. He said that after a night of reflection, he had told Russell that there would be a spiritual successor, since Russell had not given out the penny from the parable of the penny in Matthew 21-16, and therefore could not have been the steward. It stood to reason, then, that there must be a steward, a successor. Rutherford asked who this successor would be, and Johnson said, well, he didn't know, but that it would become evident in due time. By now you can probably imagine where Johnson was heading with all this. And you can also see how clever Rutherford was in getting Johnson to spill the beans. The matter in question was, who was that steward? In Biblical Greek, the word translated at the time as steward was *epitropos*. This Greek term has been rendered in several ways. As steward, King James Version, the man in charge, 2019 New World Translation, and also manager in versions like the New International Version. Of course, what suited these men best was to interpret that parable literally, so that it pointed to a specific individual. Don't go thinking Jesus was speaking figuratively. Oh no, obviously he was talking about them. All right, in the parable, Jesus spoke of a vineyard owner who hired workers at different times throughout the day and at the end of the workday instructed his steward to pay them all the same wage, a penny, regardless of how many hours they had worked. He also told the steward to start paying those who were hired last and to finish with those hired first. Naturally, those who had worked the longest weren't too happy to receive the same wage as those who had just arrived, and as is often the case, they began to complain about the vineyard owner. The parable ends with the owner reminding them that he could do as he pleased with his own vineyard, that he had honored their agreement, and that the last would be first, and the first last. Returning to our story, before his death, Russell had instructed that Johnson be sent to Britain to oversee the work of the International Bible Students Association in that country. This again shows that Johnson was someone Russell fully trusted. Johnson arrived in London ready for battle. He immediately dismissed 2 officials of the association because, according to him, they were conspiring to break away from the Watchtower. Not only that, he declared himself the rightful successor of Russell and the steward from Jesus' parable in Matthew 20. And then, all hell broke loose. Naturally, Rutherford found out. As a member of the interim 3-man board that was temporarily managing the Watchtower, he ordered Johnson to reinstate the dismissed officials. Johnson refused and rejected Rutherford's authority. Rutherford then allied himself with the dismissed officials and succeeded in having Johnson expelled from the British offices. Johnson returned to the United States, and what followed was a period of palace intrigue. 2 camps formed, one loyal to Johnson and the other to Rutherford. Each side sought control of the Watchtower. A major turning point came on July 17, 1917. That day, Rutherford published the 7th volume of Studies in the Scriptures, titled The Finished Mystery. Russell had often spoken of writing a 7th volume if he could find the key, but had also said that someone else could complete it if he didn't. Rutherford compiled the book using Russell's previous writings, supplemented with the material from Bible students who supported him. But remember, Russell had made it clear that any Watchtower publication required approval from at least 3 of the 5 members of the editorial committee. Rutherford, a staunch autocrat who considered committees a waste of time, sought no such approval. He authorized the book himself. This was the final straw that shattered any chance of reconciliation between the 2 factions. The Finished Mystery featured a significant image on its dedication page, a penny, along with the quote from Matthew 29. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. Keep that detail in mind. Soon after, Rutherford released a pamphlet titled Harvest Siftings. In it, on pages 19 and 20, he described his opponents as grumblers and complainers. Obviously, the intention was to equate them with the grumbling workers from Matthew 20:10 through 12 in Jesus' parable. So, if his opponents were the murmurers, who was the steward? Exactly, Rutherford himself. Just as Russell had subtly implied he was the faithful and wise servant, as shown in the video linked earlier, Rutherford was now implying he was the steward from the parable of the penny. And just as Russell used his wife to claim he was the faithful and wise servant, Rutherford sent his trusted man, Clayton Woodworth, to make the same type of declaration on his behalf. On August 4th, 1917, at a Bible Students' Convention in Boston, Woodworth delivered a speech that was later published as a 5-page pamphlet titled The Parable of the Penny. In it, he claimed that the penny represented the 7th volume of the Finished Mystery, that Christ was the owner of the vineyard, and that the steward in the parable was none other than the judge himself, Rutherford. Remember what was printed on the dedication page of the finished mystery? Exactly, a penny. With this, Rutherford had completed his sectarian and twisted interpretation of the parable. Christ was the owner of the vineyard. The Bible students were the laborers. The penny was the 7th volume of the finished mystery. Rutherford was the steward. And the opposition were the murmurers. Most current Jehovah's Witnesses know nothing about this chapter in their history. Today, their governing body interprets the parable differently. But the purpose of showing this here is to illustrate just how far these men are willing to go to manipulate Scripture in order to legitimize their power. This behavior continues today, as seen in 2013, when the governing body declared itself the faithful and discreet slave of Matthew 24:45-47 in the July 15, 2013 study Watchtower. See the pattern? The interpretations may change, but the strategy remains, distorting biblical texts to establish supposed divine authority over their flock. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to get notified of all new content. And if you'd like to learn more about Jehovah's Witnesses, click the link on the screen. See you soon!